The best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. No one can stop me. I'm the best ever.
Maybach music.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Let's get ready to
All step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
Welcome to the Walden Podcast. My name is Marcus Keogh. Some of you know me as Totally Upland. On the Walden Podcast, we talk about entrepreneurship, the great outdoors, and living life intentionally. Today, I've got Steve Oehlenschlager. Steve-O, professional photographer. He's a bird breeder. He's got multiple kinds of birds, some of the biggest flocks in the country. This is the guy, really. Nobody knows it. Maybe everybody knows it. He is the guy. Steve, great to have you on.
Nice to be here.
Steve, so let's talk a little bit about outdoor photography. Maybe I teed you up well, maybe I didn't. I'd love for you to take 2 seconds and introduce the listeners to you.
Well, I'm 56. I've been an outdoor photographer for about 17 years, and I do it totally on the side. I'm a chemist or a supervisor at a big chemical company, so it's the photography is just something I do for fun. So it's not the way of life. So it's so I can put it down and and back away from it at times and get sanity. So, but it's just something I do that has taken over well beyond what I ever thought it would. And I guess I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, let's go. I didn't know that you're a chemist, and let's have that conversation. But I mean, you've been published in 20, 30, 40 publications. I mean, big publications.
Literally every outdoor magazine type thing that exists now. It's like I've been published in one shape, or another. And it's there really isn't anything anymore that hasn't.
So, okay. So you've been doing this for 17 years. You've been in all the major publications outdoor wise, and this is still your side hustle.
Yeah, it just, I have such a great job. I'm fortunate enough that my job, I work 12 days or 12-hour days, and our plant runs 7 days a week. So I only work 14 days a month. So I have 14 days a month to do photography when conditions allow it. So I have unlimited time to basically do the photography. So it fits in perfect with my off time.
50-50 on off.
Yeah. So I have a lot of time to chase birds.
It's a good
hunting or with the camera or with the shotgun.
Yeah. It's good to be a scientist. They pay you a bunch of money to be a chemist too, right?
Oh yeah, So it's like it's I mean, I have a bunch of my friends. They do it full time for a living, and it's like it would be fun, but then also involves way more traveling for shoots, and it's like I don't this works out good for me, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah. From what I've heard about you though, or what I've read about you, really. You pound the pavement, you'll cover a lot of ground to go take photos. The whole country, really. Do you drive quite a bit?
Oh, yes. In the spring, in spring photography season from 1st of March to about the 1st of May. It could be in South Dakota, it could be in North Dakota, So I'm go is, it all depends on the weather. Every spring is a little different, but I'm following birds and doing that stuff as much as I can. So that's just exhausting. That's more exhausting than the fall hunting season.
Yeah.
But it's but the birds are so pretty, and it's just the greatest. And they're also not necessarily stupider, but they're less wary because hunting season's over. So it's breeding season's on their mind. So you can get a lot of pictures that you can never get in the fall.
Let's go. I've been a total rookie. I've been on the iPhone and the GoPro. I just finally got a camera. I got a Sony A7 III. I don't know if you know what that camera is. What I want to know is, what are you shooting?
I've always shot Nikon, and I think I have two Nikon Z9s right now that I use. So they're top of the line stuff, and it's like I thought their other stuff was good until I got that. It's like it just blows everything else away. But usually I have like 4 Nikons with me in the truck in the spring or fall. So they're with different lenses on them, so I don't have to switch. So it's like I always have something available. But it is kind of weird having like 4 cameras sometimes at one time on you.
You have all the gear. All the gear is what it takes. What about post production? And by the way, folks, if you look up pheasant photography, if you Google that and you go to Google Images, Steve is HD picture that you see online. I mean, he is one of the most legitimate outdoor upland bird photographers. He's probably the guy, really. Who else is doing it like you, Steve?
Well, they're not many, but it's like, it just kind of fell in that niche like that. I mean, there are some other great bird photographers, and then they do other things, but it's like I've really just tried to focus on just like the outdoor, the hunting type birds and stuff. So it's like I always focus on them, but it's everyone will get a good image now and then, but I've had some phenomenal success just chasing those birds.
You're catching birds in an action shot. I mean, you're taking photos on the rise, really, on the flush. Like, that's, how do you do that? You're going guerrilla.
It's because I have, when I'm, especially in the fall with hunting, I got great dogs, and I hunted with my brother and nephew for forever. So it's like you get to know where they're going to stand, where I'm going to stand, and it's all the anticipation. You, after chasing wild birds for 40 years, you get the idea of how things are going to happen, so you kind of prepare for it.
Yeah. So
there's been many a times when it's like tears were shed because I missed the shot, or it's not always perfect.
A shotgun, or are those days behind you, really?
No, when it's serious for pictures, I'm usually just carrying a camera, because my prime camera for a lot of stuff when we're out bird hunting for action shots, between that and the camera, the lens of the camera, it weighs 7 pounds, so it's just like carrying a shotgun already.
Right. Yeah.
So
my new camera.
I've tried both.
How am I going to do both? Yes.
Yeah, it's very tough, and I've done it, and it's like it's just it's just best when the light is spectacular. It's only the camera, because that's just you can't repeat those. When the time is right and the light's gorgeous and you're on birds, it's all just with the camera.
So are we talking about golden hour here?
Yeah, or like an overcast sky. Yes, in the last 90 minutes of the day, I am always just carrying the camera. Yeah. Same with the morning. Although in the morning we're usually waterfowl hunting, we're not bird hunting, necessarily. So, but yes, it's like when the light's nice and it's, you can't.
It's cooling off a little bit. Temperatures
get
better. I try to,
and the wind dies.
All my daily walks the last 90 minutes of the day if I can.
Yeah, it's like, and it's like the birds that you can find at that time of day. It's just a lot of times people are done hunting, but there's always something to hunt. So we're always chasing something.
Yeah. So let's go back to the camera versus the shotgun. How much more do you carry the camera than you do the shotgun? Have you
90% of
birds with your camera today than you've ever shot with your shotgun? Like what?
Oh yeah, I love just the camera. I mean, it's like if I could have a choice, many days sometimes there's just the camera.
Great. How many birds did you say you've shot at this point?
Oh, with the shotgun?
With your camera.
Oh, well, Jesus, nowadays it's like, it's not uncommon to shoot, 500 or 1,000 images an evening or something, when you're really on birds.
Yeah, like you're getting into birds. You're not even carrying a shotgun, and you're a better upland hunter than 90% of us out here. Where the birds at, Steve?
Yeah, when I'm on birds, it's like it is nothing because the action shots of the birds flush, and as I'm just looking at one on my screen right now, I just was sent into a magazine. It's like my eyes just keep looking at how I could have done things different, but it's like, it's just that, when you're on those birds, it's crazy how many, and then you got the dog shots coming back, and the interactions of the hunters, or the hunters, interacting with the dog. So it's like, you get the whole mess of activity when you're like that. Sometimes when you're just out, doing birds, it's like you may get a great bird shot, but you don't get the dog work. You don't get the, sometimes some of your best shots with people, where the smiles, or, that they don't even know you're getting their picture taken.
Candids. I love candids, especially when they're good and they're taken by a good photographer like you. So how often are you actually behind other hunters? Like they're getting called and they're saying, we're going to go chase some birds, bring the camera.
Generally it's just usually my family and friends because we are out literally for, I spend 20 plus days in October alone in North Dakota, just with friends and family. So it's like, there isn't much time with other people. It's just because, and that's how it always started. It was just taking pictures for I always wanted our pictures to look like they should be in magazines. 30 years ago, I wanted that, and then eventually equipment allowed that. But it's like, my time is, I'd rather do it with the friends and family than out for hire type with other people, because it's just I just enjoy being with my good models and my good dogs, and it's I've done it with other individuals, and it's harder because you don't know what they're going to do. It's like, I've been with my people so long, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
How things work, and
Yeah. So how often are you having to turn people down when they message you and go,
quite often?
It's come all the time, right?
It happens quite often. Hunttober is only 30 days long, and I literally are hunting. I usually work about 3 or 4 days in October, and that's it. Otherwise, it's like we are out in the field for 25 plus days, easy. Just so
Getting it.
Yeah, it's like there is no time for and that's the problem. A lot of the people I know that do that for a living and do that type of stuff, then they can't hunt because it's like they're working. It's like, right. I work all year so that I don't have to work. I don't consider it work when I'm with the friends and family and stuff like that. It's just it's all a bonus.
Yeah. So let's take a step back here. You said I always wanted my pictures to be magazine quality, and then the gear finally kind of allowed that. So
once it became digital.
Standard. Sure. My question is, you're chasing the standard, and now arguably you have become the standard. Let's talk about the evolution of that. Are you even aware, really?
I knew I was always hard on myself, and it's like, you're always like, I want the best and best. And it's like, I didn't think they were that good, and it's like, and then a bunch of friends would always like, sometimes you'd get a wildlife shot here and there, and they'd like, you should send that into a contest or do something like that. So I started doing that, and I won every single contest I ever entered. It was like 5 or 6 of them. And I'm like, oh, geez, maybe it's not so bad. And then I started submitting some to magazines, and they're like, oh, we like that. I'm like, I didn't think it was that good. I guess it was really hard on myself for quality wise, that I thought what I thought was good. Because I still don't think I've ever taken my best picture yet. I'm always chasing the best one.
Yeah. That's very relatable.
Like, you're right. Now I look back and go, oh, maybe there are some good ones there. Because I look at other people's stuff a lot of times, and I'm like, oh my God, they're smoking my ass. So it's like, I gotta figure out how to do it better. And it's like, and then I talk to them, and they're like, how the hell did you do this one? It's like, and then, they feel the same way.
You're taking some unbelievable action shots. Your guerrilla photography, following the dogs, catching birds in the middle of a flush. That to me is unbelievable. That says something about the Nikon. Let's talk about the...
Well, I was going to say, part of the thing about doing those action shots is always being prepared for an action shot. So it's like, you may be over your setup. So always have your setup so that if something fast happens, you're ready. It's like, that's part of the thing. It's like, if you're expecting fast things to happen and you're ready for it, it's easier to capture it.
What's the rig? What's the spec? What are your numbers? What are you running?
Oh, geez. About when you're doing, with about a 300 millimeter lens is usually what I run for that. It's usually about 1/1600th to 1/2000th of a second is, the shutter speed, whether, the ISO and the aperture, depending on what, the light is like. But usually, if, 1/1600th or 1/2000th of a second for action shots, you can freeze pretty much anything.
Let's go.
If you go too high, you don't, you get a little wing blur and stuff if you do it a little bit, in that 1/16th or sometimes 1/1250. But it's like, you could easily freeze things 1/4000th or one, but then sometimes it looks so frozen and there's no little motion blur in their legs or something.
Movement. Yeah. You need to know it is still action.
Yes.
So that's the sweet spot. 1600 to 2000.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about post. What are you using? You take a bunch of photos.
Yes. Oh, geez.
In one hunt, you come home, you got to do your data dump. What is it going into?
I use Adobe Photoshop and Camera Raw to it's the same as Lightroom, but it's just it's just what I started with, so it's what I use. But yeah, so a typical 1 week hunt, I'll have about 25,000 pictures, I suppose, that I don't. Very rarely do I ever delete anything on my camera, just because it's like bad things can happen. You can delete the wrong thing, so I don't delete much until I get home. So, but yeah, so it's like it takes a while to go through 25,000 pictures for a week. But yeah, with the Photoshop and Camera Raw, which is the same as Lightroom, so it's so it's about the best program you can use.
Okay, so of the 25,000, how many get deleted? How many are a potential publisher feature?
Out of 25,000 for a week, I usually whittle them down to about 500 to 600 that I keep, and probably 50 to 100 I know will get published for sure. And out of those, probably 10 where they're just like, oh my God, they're good. That's probably, I usually figure in a day shoot, if I get 1 or 2 that are just blown away good, that's about what I could expect. I might keep a little bit for friends and family type stuff where, their dog, but it's literally down to about 2-3% where they're, something that I'm proud of. But it's, like I always tell people, they're free. Take as many as you can. People never take enough pictures. It's like, if you take 3 snaps of your dog, one of them, the eyes shut, the ear flap down, or their tooth is hanging up on their lip or something, take 40 shots and you're going to get one that, wow, that everything comes together.
Yeah. The game is won in volume alone.
Yeah, and but people just never take enough. It's like, I only took 2 or something, or or change the position just a little angle a little bit more and try that, but it's like
not giving yourself enough opportunity to get a win.
Yeah. And we do this, my people get kind of pissed off at me sometimes because we might, in the middle of things, we might stop, everything stops, and I'll take pictures for 5 minutes because conditions are so superb that we're never going to get this time again to do it. So it's like, we'll stop and, and actually, have a timeout just for pictures.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it, it's like that you can never get that time again and you're done,
Yes. This is the mind of a professional photographer, folks. Not just a professional photographer, but a scientist, and he's scientific with the photography. He's playing the game truly. So let's talk about chemistry. What do you do? What do you do as a chemist?
Oh, I'm a supervisor at I used to be more involved with the chemistry. Now I'm a supervisor. We're at a specialty chemical plant that we make fiberglass resin. We're like one of the only plants. There's probably only 20 plants or 25 plants in the nation. So we're very specialty in what we do. So
what is fiberglass resin used for?
For the composite industry, for any type of boat manufacturing,
pole vault poles.
Yep, RVs, panels, anything that can be made in the composite industry. It's like that's the type of resin that we make.
It's supposed to be much stronger and lighter, right?
Oh yes. What
does it typically replace? Just fiberglass, plain old.
Well, it's usually used in, it's lighter than metal. It's strong, it's stronger. So all that composite type stuff is used just and you can make big pieces or small pieces. It's crazy because in manufacturing, I don't get to see how the end use of the customer is much, but it's like, we'll see pictures of what they do, but it's just, but it's pretty involved stuff. What we do is really specialty. So it's something that I just fit right in. It just worked with me. I loved it. And, it just, it was a great career and, and gave me the time to do everything else.
How long have you been doing it for?
I've been doing it for 30 years.
Okay, let's talk about innovation in the space. I mean, it is the innovation. People are moved for fiberglass, carbon composite to replace something that might just been fiberglass before, right?
Yeah.
How much has it changed since you've started?
Oh, it's crazy. I can't even. It blows me away to think of what they do. I mean, one of our biggest customers is Cambria countertops. We sell resin to Cambria, and they make the highest end quartz countertops in the world. And it's like it blows me away to think of that's that's like 10% resin and 90% quartz, and how do they make that look so cool? With 10% plastic.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most sought after high end things in a house all over the world. There's still only one plant here in Minnesota that makes the entire world's supply.
Well, what other things can consumers find them in, really?
Oh, what's with regards to the composite stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's like, your John Deere parts, or your the frames on the lawn, anything that is sort of plastic like is usually a fiberglass composite type thing. It's like
it's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. It's like, I mean, I literally, it just amazes me that how much of a car is not metal and or is composite parts.
Right. I mean, we're doing that with everything these days if we can.
Oh yeah, it's stronger, lighter. It's but it's just it's pretty cool. It's to do that. It's like I never thought it just was a job that happened, and it was like, wow. It's like it was just been awesome though. And like I said, it gives me the time to do everything else. It's like that's right. Even more amazing.
Right. A gig that allows you to still pursue your dreams.
Yeah, I get 180 days a year off from work, not counting vacation, to go do things.
Yeah, hard to be. It's good to be a scientist. You're scientific with it in a lot of ways, actually. What I want to talk about is these birds. You've got multiple flocks of birds that you have bred, I suppose. How long have you been doing this for?
I've had birds since I was 6. I've raised pigeons. I've raised cranes. I've raised and bred swans. I've every type of game bird. But now pretty much all I have are various species of grouse. I have blue grouse. I have ruffed grouse and a lot of prairie chickens and spruce grouse. And then a few other pets like Hungarian partridge and for pets, but mostly I just raise grouse.
Okay, here's my question for you: the lesser prairie chicken and the greater prairie chicken. When you Google this, by the way, they'll take the same picture and say one's the lesser prairie chicken and one's the greater prairie chicken. You will leave the internet more confused about the differentiation between the two species.
Lessers are a little different looking. There's no lessers in captivity right now, but they're a little bit different looking. Especially when they have their breeding. I don't ever know what you want to call it, but when they have their eyelid combs, eye combs. It's like they have huge eye combs. I've never actually seen a lesser prairie chicken. I've never been in that part of Kansas. I've always wanted to go down there, but then I'm always too busy to go down and chase them in the spring with the camera.
All right. So arguably the smartest person in North America on prairie chickens hasn't seen a lesser prairie chicken, but you would be the guy that probably has all the information, more information than anyone else in the country right now on greater prairie chickens.
Yeah.
See how that's not the case. You have the largest flock in the country, right?
Yeah, they've in the world. Nobody has more than, I think, right now there's probably, I got, 40 or 50 breeders. And so, I mean, with young ones, there's probably 130 out there right now. It's, they thrive in numbers. It's like I usually, overwinter 50, 60 of them, but it's like they thrive in numbers, and it's like, I'm all in on them. Just, it's not like I can go get them anyplace else from other people. So it's like, that's going to be my legacy, just raising them. It's just fun. I finally figured out all their quirks. So it's like things are going good, but yeah, they're just fascinating to watch.
That's what I want to know. I want to know the quirks and personality. They're becoming a bird for upland hunters that are rarely seen. I mean, they're becoming a specialty species, if you will. There's not a whole lot of them in the wild, it seems.
Well, the only reason that there's any left is because they live in areas that couldn't be farmed. If they would be completely gone in Minnesota if it wasn't for where they live. Just couldn't be farmed because it was too wet. Same thing in Kansas. The only reason that there's any in Kansas is because they're in hilly country same with South Dakota, where they can't plow it up. But if they could plow it up, they'd be gone. I mean, Illinois and Indiana used to be their hotbed of activity back in the early 1800s. And Illinois has a population of about 125, and they have about 3,000 acres of habitat in like 2 spots. That's it. I mean, they used to have millions of them, but because the farm, the whole state was plowed up, they're all gone.
So let me get this straight. You're saying prairie chickens, they need prairie?
They need prairie. It doesn't matter if it's rocky prairie or flat prairie, but they got to have prairie. It's like they cannot handle modern agriculture. They can handle grazing, but they cannot handle tilled up ground.
Yeah.
I mean, they're allowed some, but once that, core area of prairie is gone, they will cease. They're no tolerance whatsoever to encroachment. Sharp-tailed grouse are like 5 times more tolerable. They can handle, broken up prairie, agriculture, but prairie chickens, there is just no give on them whatsoever.
Interesting.
It's unfortunate, but it's like that is just the way it is.
They're a softer bird than the Sharpies, you'd say?
No, they're tougher. They're even tougher, I think. But it's just something about their personality, the breeding. They just cannot tolerate encroachment of agriculture. Once you start plowing up, I mean, they'll feed in agricultural fields just fine, but where they really live, usually there's still only a few miles where they'll go out to the agricultural fields and come back to their core area. It's not like you're not going to find them very rarely 10 miles away from the core area of the prairie, and that's another thing. People then, everything is all screwed up because we've screwed it up over the times, but it's like those birds used to be very migratory. Sharp-tailed grouse used to migrate, not in the prairie chickens used to migrate, and that stuff just doesn't happen anymore. It does to a certain extent, but it's not like it was. I mean, there used to be, they'd watch them come south there, they'd show up all of a sudden, there'd be none, and then there'd be a flock of 20,000 of them, the next day out of nowhere and stuff like that. So it's like we don't even realize all that knowledge is gone, but nobody ever kept track of that stuff, and now it's all gone, and you can't, never to be seen again.
Yeah. It's I mean, how can we bring them back?
Oh,
I know.
It's basically, we're lucky if we could just maintain what we have. If we can maintain it, that's as good as we're gonna get.
You're listening to the Walden Podcast.
All right, so you've got a few rare birds, a few different grouse species, really. I'm here in Montana. I'm in Helena, Montana. There's supposed to be an upland slam around here somewhere. 3 different kinds of grouse. How do I find them?
Oh, jeez. I don't know. I've never been in that part of Montana. I'm only in the prairie part, but it's like, oh gosh. I don't, it's like some of those I mean, I have blue grouse, but I've never seen where actually blue grouse live in the wild. It's like, I'm a flatland guy, so it scares me, the mountains. It's like, oh, geez, humping up and down mountains.
Okay.
But,
Blue
they're
grouse,
out there.
also known as sooty, also known as dusky. Are these all the three the same bird?
No, they're the sooty and dusky, they separated them into different species a couple of years ago. So they are, even though they look alike, they're a different species.
Okay.
Same with the Gunnison sage grouse and the greater sage grouse. They all of a sudden, well, no, they're different. It's like everyone thought they were the same, but it turned out there was two different species out there.
Okay, what's a blue though? Is a blue a sooty?
Well, blue grouse is just the generic term for sooty and dusky. Because just yeah.
So so you can say blue and be right about dusky or sooty, but as soon as you say dusky or sooty, you're talking about a specific one.
Yes.
Okay. So do you have duskies and sooties, or
no? I just have the sooties. I have the sooties.
Sooties. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just assumed you sang them a bedtime story or something, and you could give me a tune to sing while I'm hunting the forest.
They do have a cool hooting sound in the spring. It's like it's pretty cool. It's like, unfortunately, they only do it for like a 2-week period. It's not like prairie chickens. The prairie chickens boom for almost 3 months. So it's that's just 3 or 2.5 months solid of booming every single day to hear that. And that's what's cool about the prairie chickens, is that even though the pens are about 125 yards from my bedroom window, the booming will go right through the walls of my house, and I can hear it at 5 o'clock in the morning in the spring. It's like before the sun's even up. Here, I can hear the boom, and that's what's weird about the booming. Is you can hear that it sounds almost the same whether you're 100 yards away or a half mile. When it's calm out, it just carries across the prairie. It's like, I can't even, if I had a time machine, I'd be going back into about the 1870s, 1880s, when the prairie chickens were thick. I can't imagine the whole prairie would just be booming and just this hum. I don't know. I can't imagine what it was like.
I've heard it on YouTube. I've watched it on YouTube, but I've never heard it in real life, and I'd love to. For the listeners that don't know, prairie chickens and a couple of other grouse species, they meet on top of a mountain every year, and they have a dance off, and that's when they're booming. They do that to attract mates. Is that right?
Yeah, the prairie chickens, usually it's in the prairie, they'll have their places, and it'll be like usually short grass. And the males have this affinity to that lek or dancing ground, and they'll just for 2.5 hours every morning and about an hour and a half every night. That's where they're at for 60 straight days, maybe about 90 days, booming just to attract a female.
So, in leks are typically on top of mountains. I'm curious, you having them in captivity, do they really care if it's a mountain that much, or do they still place where they agree, like this is where it's happening, this is where it's going down?
The prairie chickens, it's like usually it's an absolutely flat area, but it's just what's important with prairie chickens and sharp-tailed grouse. Sharp-tailed grouse is usually a hillier country, a little bit, and they'll usually be on top of hills, but it could be a flat area as well. But the most important thing is there's no trees within probably 300 yards in all directions, so that a hawk or a bird of prey can't be sitting on it and pick them off. So they have to be no trees around, so that's one of their things. But in captivity, it's like they don't care as much. But what is kind of interesting is there are certain pens I could put different males in year after year, and they still pick a 5-foot circle. Why they pick the same 5-foot circle as their, another one? It's year after year. It's like somehow it's like the spot, and I'm like, it doesn't look any different than this spot over here, but this is their spot.
They know.
And what's cool, and they do this in the wild too. And you can hunt prairie chickens on a lek and sharp-tails on a lek in the fall too, if you find and know where they are, because the males will still be there in the fall. And sometimes it's like it's like it's their happy place. It's like their favorite chair next to next to the couch, or the couch next to the TV. It's like they have these spots, and it's like they have such an affinity to this spot or area that all the rest of the prairie chickens could be out feeding somewhere, but that male, he's like, I'm not leaving. He'll be just hunkered down having a nap at 2:00 in the middle of October. But it's like, I can't tell you how many sharp-tailed grouse we've shot over the years from Lex, because they can't leave. It's like they have this affinity towards them.
Interesting.
And there always will be males.
Interesting. So
you could even shoot them like that in the fall with like decoy hunting them, actually coming into the Lex, because they just have they see another one, and they come right back to that same spot. And you could selectively harvest just males if you wanted to do that, but most people don't know how to find them or whatever.
Yeah, so there are some Lex that are known,
Yes,
they have viewing. But what you're telling me, though, from what I understood of a Lek to be, is it needed to be a hill amongst other hills. It had to be some kind of dance platform that was
in general, in like good sharptail and prairie chicken habitat, there's one Lek usually about every section. So they're all about a mile apart. Sometimes I've found some that were a half mile apart, which still blows my mind that they're half mile apart. And I've found a few of them in the fall that are like that. But they're generally about a mile apart. So there's in good areas, there's if you go a mile in all directions, there's one everywhere. So some land might be a little more hilly, and then they're on a hill, but some this section might be flat as can be, and they're just in the wide open, and it might be a 6-inch rise. The one particular one that in western Minnesota, it's just a few inches taller than the surrounding area, where there's usually a little bit of standing water, but just that extra 6 inches of elevation, it's dry. So they do that, and he's just thinking they've been doing that for thousands of years. It's like generally some of the places are the exact same spots. Sometimes they move, from here to there. If the grass gets too high, they might up and move a couple 100 yards away. They do that. It's like they're not that faithful. But we found some out in North Dakota for sharp-tailed grouse that I bet you because of the rocky terrain, I bet you it hasn't changed for thousands of years.
How are you identifying a Lek? I mean, it's one thing to know, like, hey, we see the big giant male greater sage grouse come to have a dance off on top of this mountain every year. This is a Lek. But how are you determining? How do you know?
You get good at finding them when I've actually found many of them on Google Earth. Believe it or not, you can find, and then I've confirmed that they were there. Because what'll happen where this Lek, it'll be about 50 yards or 30 yard, 40 yard circle, and all of a sudden the grass will be like short, like a golf green, for no reason whatsoever. And you'll find feathers on it and droppings, and it's like, and once you see one, you know exactly what it is. But it's just all of a sudden it'll be a change in grass color, and it's usually because when they spend so much time on there, they actually eat the grass and trample the grass just like cattle would, or graze it like geese. So it's just short, and then there'll be feathers from they're fighting or molting. So when you start knowing what you're looking for, it's like, oh, there's one right there, and then usually right off the edge where the grass goes to 6-8, that's where the birds get up.
Yeah. Interesting.
There's one that I didn't realize it was one I found about 4 years ago, and it's literally 75 yards off from a major tar road, and it's just right up on this little plateau. And I remember pulling up and looking at them, all of a sudden there they are. There's like 40 of them right there. It's like during grouse season, it was like opening day of sharp-tailed grouse season, and they're all sitting around, getting to show up in the morning, and then they're just getting ready to disperse. But it's like, here they are right off the major tar road. So they're not always in the middle of any, way on the back or anything. They can be quite close to objects or people and stuff.
So this is how you get 5,000 action shots, ladies and gentlemen. Know where all the freaking Leks are. That's how you get a bunch of good action shots.
Yes, it's like if you're right, when you know where the birds are, and some of that stuff is well guarded, and I just know the right people that give me places to go, because it's not fun just to go to the same place where everyone else goes. I want to go to a different place where it's different background, different types of grass. So it's like, stuff like that. So it does help. I have with my biology background, and I have, a non-hunting crowd that will point me where birds are for taking pictures and stuff.
Cool. So I'm curious to know, you started breeding birds or having birds when you were 6. I'm a product of YouTube University. You're pre-YouTube University. I want to know, how do you master something, teach yourself, books? What have you done really?
Oh, it is just, it's usually about, of people that raise birds, only about 10% are probably successful. 90% keep them, 10% actually breed them. And I was always good. You just get in touch of what birds need, and the internet nowadays was one of the most amazing things, is because I was having major issues with them, and everyone else was, but I spent literally hundreds of hours researching, basically turned into a veterinarian and doing exploratory, research to find out how I could, solve the problem. And, and it's like, and with the internet out there, it's like, it's amazing what scientific papers you could find. But the information, it's like, however deep you want to look for it, you can find now. But back in the day, it's like, you're just like, I don't know, you might come across the right person to get firsthand information. But if you didn't cross that, you didn't know you couldn't read some of that stuff in books because it was beyond the book level.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying is you're probably the guy. I mean, are you releasing papers? How many podcasts are you doing? Just trying to spill your guts?
But I tell everybody when it's like, this is what you got to do, or to treat them this way. That's the problem with the main problem with grouse species in captivity is they get parasitic worms very easy. And it is hard to kill certain kinds of them. Certain kinds are easy, but certain kinds are not hard. So it was like, how can I treat them without being, you can't just grab birds and do this. You have to treat them in a non-invasive way. And so it was like finding that out. And but once I crossed that threshold, it was just, it was not, pretty much better. Plus, it's like, I also got to know a lot of people that, I only raised the greater prairie chickens, but I also knew people that were involved with the Atwater's prairie chicken down in Texas and Oklahoma for release. So it's like, even though I was a private individual, they would share techniques on what they did, and I share stuff like that. So it's, because we're all we want is healthy, happy birds. So it's like, So it's like, fortunately, I'm in, like I say, the inner circle where the few people that know, I can find out. But it's just, it's something that took a lot of time. But it's, if you're going to have a bird out back, I want something cool. I didn't want anything, everyone had, although of course I have my 5 ringneck pheasants as pets, you got to have that too. But it's just, it's cool to, to have things that nobody else has ever even seen.
Yeah, most definitely. It's definitely, they're rare, really. It's such a cool bird to...
And just the mannerisms. It's like, if people could see pheasants are rather boring. They don't have many vocalizations, and honestly, God, they sound like chickens half the time. But pheasants, rough grouse, and prairie chickens, the vocalizations that they have between one another, that as a hunter you would never know ever in your entire career. You could shoot 1,000 of them and you'd never know that they can make these sounds or do this, or it's like one of the coolest things that I found out. And it's like, but I knew this from hunting. It's like, is that people never understand why when you're walking up on birds, the sharp-tails or prairie chickens will flush 30, 40 yards from you when they never saw you. It's because they can sense that in their feet that you are walking. I have done experiments with my birds where I snuck up to them. There is no way they saw me. They couldn't hear me. Yet I popped my, and I pop my eyes up above the panels where they can see, and they're always watching me because they can sense the vibrations in the ground through their feet that you're getting close. So it's like people when they're hunters and they're walking to, clunking around and this and that, it's like those birds without even seeing you, they know that you're there, and you get within their comfort level of 40 yards and poof, they're gone. But yeah, it's like they literally, I don't know. I don't think it's this case with pheasants. I actually think they're kind of stupid in that regard. They're more of the sight and hear, and I don't think rough grouse do it either. But something about prairie chickens and sharp-tailed grouse, they have that sensitive a feet that they can sense the vibrations of you getting close to them.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, then it's like, oh yeah, there's no way they saw me or they heard me, but that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. I hadn't really thought about it, but it does make sense. Why not? They feel you stomping around. They're close to the ground. That checks out. What I'm curious to know, their air sacs in their necks. You see different photos online. I see different colors. What's a Sharpies? What color is it?
Sharp-tailed are purple.
Okay.
And that's only in the spring, and then they lose the hormones, and in the fall, then it's a very, very faint purple. So it's like it's not the same color in the spring as it is in the fall, just because the hormones are all gone. It's still there, but it doesn't have the hormones to give it the color.
Interesting.
Same with the prairie chickens.
Are orange?
They're orange. With my captive ones are missing something in their diet, so they're sometimes a little more purple. But or yellow. It's like, but in the wild, they're totally orange in the wild. But then in the fall, by the time hunting season comes along, they're a pale pink. But they're still there. But they lose that orange. After about the 4th of July, the hormones are gone, and it starts reverting back, and loses the orange.
So that's why I see different colors on them online, more or less.
Yeah. But then when people, like I say, when they mount them all the time in the fall, if they get a male and they put, it's like that's one of my pet peeves. It's like you shot it. It's like they don't have the air sacs in the fall. It's like I mean they're there, but it's like they're all tight. They're not loose like they are, and there's no color to them whatsoever.
Interesting.
And the hens have an air sac spot too, so it's like you can actually see there's a bald spot on their neck if you look at them. Same with hen sharp-tailed grouse too. It doesn't ever amount to much, but it's still there.
Interesting. I was curious about that in sage grouse country last year when we got some sages. Did the males and females both have them?
No, I think that's just the males only.
Only the male.
Yeah.
Young males then is what it was that I encountered. I was curious though. So, how many birds do you have in the flock right now?
I probably have about 250 birds right now. But what's that?
Sharpies, Duskies, or blues, and prairie chickens.
And prairie chickens, yeah. And then usually, I disperse them to some other breeders, and I usually keep 100 plus over the winter for myself. That's about as much. And I'm not expanding. I am full. It's ridiculous amount of work, but it's like I enjoy it. It's like I don't know why I do it year after year, but it's fun. Right. So it's like,
yeah. So part of it is cool birds. They're just cool birds, and it's and they bring you some kind of experience to be able to.
And if I stopped with the prairie chickens, if I stopped breeding them, they probably would be gone from captivity in 4 or 5 years, and there would never be any more. So it's like I feel like I got to keep doing it just to keep them, because if they're gone, they're gone. Nobody ever gets to experience it. It's like people always get sad. It's like, oh, you shouldn't have wild birds in captivity. I mean, they've always been in captivity. Almost all my breeders came from research work to try and save the endangered Atwater's prairie chicken. They practice with greater prairie chickens, but it's like, if you don't know anything about these birds, it's not like it.
Right.
But it's like you still got to have that knowledge. It's like there's, it's like, why do we have things at a zoo? It's like zoos are way better than they ever used to be. But if you didn't have them, they'd be gone, and then nobody would ever see them, or it's just so it's just something that's I love doing, and
That was my
gotta
next
have 'em.
question. Is part of it to ensure their safety and conservation? I mean, at some point, as they start dwindling or become endangered, at some point they've got to integrate with society or humanity. Like we've got to take them on really.
Yeah, and that's what they did with the
Zoo.
Atwater's prairie chickens. I mean, they have it's a huge deal to, they raise about 300-400 of them to let go every year down in Texas. And, it's like, unfortunately, we don't have to worry about that right now with the greater prairie chickens, and hopefully we never do. But it's all the stuff that they learned from the graders, they applied to the Atwaters, and they could hit the ground running when they actually worked on their huge research projects to release them and everything.
So,
And that's the most
bringing them
endangered.
back, is that working?
It's not working, but it's once you get down with game birds to extremely low levels, it's tough. But it is working a little bit, but it's like, I mean, it is, inches, every year better, but
Yeah.
but not doing it is a guarantee that they will go away.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, and it's unfortunate. I mean, grouse, the heath hen, I mean, that went extinct in 1936, and so which is the eastern form of the prairie chicken.
I've never heard of an Atwater's prairie chicken, and I'm from Texas. I didn't even know they were a thing.
Yeah,
that
they're down by Houston. South of Houston is where the last stronghold is, down along the coast. That's the last stronghold. They used to be in western Louisiana, and then Texas, but that whole area down there.
Are they a swamp chicken or
no? They were still that much prairie down there before it all went to farmed up and got converted to crops.
Wow.
There was millions of them back. I think it was I think they started going downhill in like the 1880s or something like that. Through a variety. I mean, they were shooting like crazy, but it's like the problem with birds like that is when you dig up the prairie, it doesn't matter how many you shoot, you killed them de facto by plowing the ground up.
Yeah, taking all of their habitat away.
Yeah. And they're just not flexible. They can't go over here or go over there. They're done.
Yeah. So let's talk about restoration, I suppose, habitat restoration or conservation. Where are you at on it?
Oh, I try and get involved with as much stuff as I can, but it's just every year you see prairies plowed up that, to turn them to wheat. It may only be 100 acres right over here, but it's now wheat. It will never be native prairie ever again. It'll never go back. And it's just like, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's, it's so sad. It's like everyone, wants to save the panda and all this, but nobody cares about, drive from the Canada border to Texas and tell me how many actual, prairies or, grounds that you actually see. It's like, there's none left. It's like, I literally can't believe that more prairie birds aren't extinct, whether, it's a little Tweety bird that needs, but it's like, all that stuff is gone. But it's sad to see that every year, a little bit, just over here, a little bit, I spend tons of time because I have the time to look at, satellite images from 75 years ago where that used to be prairie, and now it's all crops. No, there's no such thing as going from crops back to prairie. It doesn't happen. It may happen for 5 years for a CRP contract or something, but when it's done, and it still is not the same prairie as it was before. It was just grass. But yeah, it's so sad that we have this save the whales here and there, but nobody gives a crap about doing stuff in your backyard because it's just grass.
I went to the Nebraska Sandhills. In my mind, that's prairie. That's really the only prairie I've ever seen.
And the only reason that prairie exists is because it can't be farmed because of the way it's too sandy. It could never be plowed up because it was too sandy, too hilly. Otherwise, it would be gone. Yeah, and gone in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I have never seen anything like it. That's true. old west prairie, and that's the only place
Yep.
I've ever seen a prairie chicken either.
Yep.
And
But that's why that's why they're there. It's good. But yes, it's and it's the same in South Dakota where they have them. It's that there's areas that they just couldn't plow up. But it's just so sad that it's like it's simple. It's just don't wreck it and it'll be fine. It's already there, but don't we just wreck a little bit every time, more corn and beans and everything else. And it's like, that's why I say there's no bringing them populations ever back. It's only just to maintain what we have. And that would be, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. And
because even in my lifetime, you look back 30 years or 40 years, how many birds that they used to kill, like sharptails and prairie chickens in South Dakota compared to now. And it's like, it's like half as many because there's half as much prairie. But, there's still but it's like, this the other stuff is gone.
Yeah, it's a problem. The prairie chickens hopefully aren't going away. And more people need to get fired up about them. How do you get people even aware? I think probably your typical who among us outside of your uplanders really even know what a prairie chicken is?
Exactly. The only reason we even have field trials and stuff like that, all those field trials for dogs 125 years ago were all with prairie chickens. All that stuff was prairie chicken, and then it just like, they just disappeared. I mean, but see now, like our hunters are so in tune that pretty much that ringneck pheasants are the upland bird. Because they're 4 generations ago, or 5 generations ago, all the hunters were shooting prairie chickens. There was no pheasants. The pheasants only been around for about 115 years. Before that, it was all prairie chickens. But it's the one book I read that's done by a great biologist. But their guesstimate for Iowa alone at the peak of the prairie chicken population was about 32 million birds in Iowa alone. I mean, yeah, I can't even comprehend if you figure out that. I mean, even the best years Iowa ever had, they probably had, 1/3 that many pheasants. But to think that there was that many prairie chickens in just Iowa.
How many are in the country? Do you know?
Oh, the population now probably of all the states put together is probably less than 500,000. And that's only because Kansas and Nebraska have in South Dakota have some pretty good numbers, in some years. But otherwise, yeah, it's definitely less than 500,000 probably.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 places that I know of that you can find them.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota, we do have a hunting season from they give out about 100 tags a year to shoot. We shoot about 125 a year. We have a population of about in the spring of about 2,500. It's pretty stable because they do have a core set of habitat for them. But it's not. They're not getting. They might get better for a couple of years with better weather, and then and then they go down with worse weather. Which is typical of game birds.
Are they protecting them, or is there things in place already to make sure that they're kept?
Well, I mean, if long as you don't mess with their prairie, it's like they're fine. It's like that. Everything else, all the other things don't really. They can handle everything else. It's just don't plow up their ground or or mow it down, and they can even handle mowed prairie now and then because it's reminiscent of the way the buffalo used to do things. So it's like they thrive on burning the prairie. That's another thing too. It's like so many people are so anti-fire. You can't burn this. It's like sometimes you have to burn that grasslands down to the ground to start to rejuvenate them and make things better. But even vast majority of hunters just are so opposed to that sometimes, and they're wrecking things. It's like that's what you have to do. Those birds need that stuff. But it's so ridiculous how so many hunters are so anti-burning, or they go to their wildlife management area in the fall and it's all grazed to the ground. It's like, well, okay. But next year it's going to be 5 times better, but they don't care. It's like it was bad this year.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It's like we need that stuff. It's like the people who do this that burn and control the grazing, all this, they know this stuff. It's like there's documentation. The scientific evidence is overwhelming. You have to do this. But yet, we still have a great amount of people that are just think it's stupid. And argue about it. It's like, well, you killed a pheasant nest when you burned it in the spring. Yeah, you did. You killed 2 duck nests too. But in 3 weeks, there are going to be 17 times more of them out there, and they'll have better success. And it's like, and that's what nature did for hundreds of years, thousands of years. But
Right.
we're our own worst enemies sometimes.
Fires happen naturally. Don't when we do things to make sure that they don't happen, really, that's the problem. As we go out of our way, fires, we're fighting them. We're trying to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we did that for years with forest fires. It's like, 100% prevention, and then when you get a forest fire, it roars and burns for like 7 weeks, and and kills everything. When if you just had a whole bunch of little ones all the time, there'd be no problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what do you even do about that? I know as a hunter, historic fire might be a good sign. New growth, a woodcock's probably in there.
Exactly.
Grouse is probably in there. New growth, they get a little bit of cover going. So I know this. Is it just impatience? It's not seeing the big picture. It's not looking far enough into the future. Is that the reality?
Yeah, it's like grouse hunters. I haven't hunted here for 10 years, and there's only a fraction of the amount of the birds there was 10 years ago. Well, the cover's tube thing, it needs logging again. I mean, I own quite a bit of, a big farm in central Minnesota with grouse and woodcock, and I think we've logged it, various parts of it now, like 6 times in 40 years. And, you always have some in young growth, and it's like, I mean, we still, have healthy populations, but there's only a sweet deal for rough grouse and woodcock. There's only a sweet spot of about 20 years. Sure, they're there, earlier or later, but that mega good period is, like a 20-year window. And after that, it's like, no matter what, they're never going to be as many as there were. So, but nobody wants to chop down their forest and then, they're not going to be anything for 3 years. Well, they're not, but it's like, you know what? You're not going to have anything if you don't chop it down.
Right.
It grows right back,
Yeah, they're going to migrate on you and they're going to go somewhere else.
Yes.
But you're giving them habitat to where they can come back to and survive.
Yeah, you got it. Definitely for wildlife, you got to wreck a few things to make it better.
Yeah. So that's restoration. Tear it down, really.
Yeah. It is for grouse and stuff. It's like the chainsaws, for those types, same with white-tailed deer. It's like they hand in hand. The chainsaw, it makes grouse and makes deer.
Interesting. Whereas don't tear down the prairie.
Well, don't because it doesn't. Yeah, once you tear the prairie down, it ain't coming back.
Game over. You can burn the prairie.
You can burn it,
but as soon as you plow it, as soon as you commercialize it,
we had one place in North Dakota that they did that one year. It was about half a section, and I bet you we saw a minimum of 100 sharp-tailed grouse on it the one year, and then the next year and granted it was the next year for weather-wise and everything else, but so bird populations fluctuate, but they took out on the one end about 100 acres of the prairie and just planted it into crops. It's like, to this day, never seen but a third, half of the birds ever again, as many as there were, and it's like, and it's never coming back. It's like, no one ever puts in native prairie, with 400 different species of plants. It's like, if you plant a mix now, it's like, you got a 20 species mix of grass or something. Well, some of that native prairie has 400 species.
Yeah. My big deal here is how many Americans have actually been to the Nebraska Sandhills? It's beautiful. It's a sight to behold. People don't even know that there's a something to appreciate, really, that should be saved is the problem. There's people that don't even know what the prairie really is.
No, they just, anytime they see grass, it's they don't. But yeah, I think people think that literally that's all a prairie is grass, and it's like, good healthy prairie. There's hundreds of species of different stuff that, this one could be all different in the colors out there at any given time of year are different.
Yeah,
It's just a
it is a bunch
complicated
of
landscape.
grass, but it is holding a bunch of life. And secondly, it's beautiful. It's a bunch of grass, and you haven't seen it. Go out there during sunrise or during sunset, and come back
Oh yeah.
and say you don't love the prairie. You'll have an appreciation
Yeah.
for the prairie.
You know what? Some people like the mountains. It's like this and that. It's like I just love the prairie. It's like there's something about flat. It doesn't. It could be hilly prairie, but just to be out in that, stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's and because a good healthy prairie ecosystem it's crazily productive. A lot of granted, we don't even have the livestock component of it that we used to. For the the elk. I mean, there used to be grizzly bears all over the prairies only because it held so much life that they could, there was enough big game animals that they could, they could prey on. But yeah, grizzly bears used to live on the prairie everywhere. And we're kind of common. So it's like,
wow, it's hard to wrap your head around. It sounds crazy, really, but you also look at all the farmland and you go, this looks like it used to be prairie. I could totally see this all being prairie. The Great American West. They rode wagons across it. It's pretty wild. When you go into the sandhills and seeing it, I know I keep saying that because it's really my only true idea of the prairie. But looking at it, you just go, I could totally see somebody riding a wagon through this.
I mean, I just think of that. That used to be all the way to the, in one shape or another, all the way to the Canadian border.
Right.
From, and it went in another 500 miles to the south, all the way to Houston.
Yeah. Truly an unbelievable sight to behold. And I think we've said it in an episode before, but I'll say it again. Go get on the prairie.
It was like our Serengeti, everyone's like, oh, the beautiful Serengeti, Africa. We got to save that. But nobody gives a crap about saving the stuff that we had here. We need more beans and stuff to feed the world. Which is
the prairie is a sight to behold. I think people would change their mind about that a little bit and say, maybe we don't need these beans. Steve, it's been so wonderful having you on, sir. I want to have you on again. I can already tell you, I don't think we're done really talking. I have so much more to ask you, but right here, I've got an hour cut. I thoroughly enjoyed having you on.
I'm glad I didn't embarrass myself or something. But yes, I'm always willing to talk about something.
You could never, sir. You're such a wealth of knowledge. It blows my mind. I want you back on.
Well, anytime.